Well, how about this, huh? We're diving into a topic today that's changing faster than a GPS trying to keep up with a wrong turn driving instruction. You listening? You want to know how all these driving instructors are adapting to the new tech, right? Like electric cars and all this self-driving stuff, am I right?
That's a really interesting area to be looking into right now, yeah.
It is. It really is. And we're going to try to look at it from kind of a French perspective and, and a global one, okay? For you today, since it seems like you're interested in how those two things kind of connect up with each other, so our French sources, they've been buzzing about this new training program, the ECSR program.
Yeah, the Éducation à la sécurité routière.
Okay, so what is that in English? Like, what does that translate to for those of us who,
Road safety education, basically.
the road safety education? That's pretty straightforward, huh? But, like, why are the articles making it sound like this huge deal over there?
Well, it's a pretty big change. What they're doing is they're trying to have like a higher standard for driving instructors, so it's not just knowing, stop signs and red lights and stuff anymore.
So is it like driver's ed 2.0 or something? Like, what's involved?
I mean, it's definitely more comprehensive, yeah. They're covering like all the new technology being put into cars, right?
Yeah.
Driver assistance systems and all that, plus, all the new safety standards that are always changing. Oh, and they're even teaching these instructors how to teach this new generation, the ones who are glued to their phones 24/7, which is probably pretty tough.
Yeah. It's not like teaching your grandma how to drive, that's for sure. It makes sense, though, that the instructors need to be totally up to date on all of it so they can actually, prepare these new drivers.
Yeah.
So is this ECSR thing, is that just in France or other countries doing it too?
Well, it started in France, but it seems like driving instruction is getting more and more demanding everywhere, and there are a few reasons for that.
Like what? Why do driving instructors suddenly need to level up their game, so to speak?
Well, one reason is just the cars themselves. They're so much more complicated now than they used to be even just 10 years ago. Like all the stuff we've been talking about, electric, all the connectivity features, it's a lot to wrap your head around for the instructors set and the students.
That's true. And it's not just knowing how to use it yourself as the instructor, right?
Yeah.
You got to teach somebody else how to use it and do it safely. It's a whole other thing.
You're exactly right. And then on top of that, there's all the safety rules. They change constantly. There are new rules all the time because of things like distracted driving, which, well, we all know it's a problem.
New rules, new tech. It's a lot. You said there was something else driving this shift too, though, right?
Right, the other big one, it's the global push for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Especially in Europe, which is probably why France is like leading the way here with this ECSR thing. They're really pushing to get rid of emissions and make transportation more sustainable and all that.
Makes sense. And speaking of electric vehicles, I'm guessing it's a completely different experience driving one of those than a regular, gas-powered car.
Oh, totally. And actually, that's something we're going to get into a little deeper in a minute. You were saying something before about how it's different driving an electric car.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Speaking of, adapting, one of the articles was talking about this French driving school called Ornicar. And it sounds like they're like way ahead of the game when it comes to this whole electric car thing. What's up with them?
Well, they're a good example of how these driving schools are trying to keep up with the times. Like, they're not just about, getting your driver's license. They've got these online courses so you can prep for the written test. They'll even help you with insurance and finding a car to buy. It's wild.
Wow, a one-stop shop. That's pretty savvy.
Yeah, I mean, Ornicar gets it. These new drivers, especially the ones who want to go electric, they need more than just, like, the basics of driving. It's all the other stuff, too, right?
Right. It's like, okay, you know how to drive the electric car, but then there's all this other stuff you got to figure out. Didn't we see something about like range anxiety and how to charge and like just the etiquette of it all?
Yeah, exactly. Like learning to drive an electric car, it's a whole different skill set.
It's
You
a-
know about regenerative braking.
A little bit, yeah. Isn't that where like when you take your foot off the gas, the car kind of starts braking on its own?
That's the one. It takes some getting used to, though.
I bet. It's cool, but I can see how it would be weird at first.
Yeah, and then there's the whole range anxiety thing, like you said, people freaking out that they're going to run out of juice before they get where they're going. But a good driving instructor, one who really understands EVs, they can teach you how to make your battery last longer, where all the charging stations are, stuff like that.
It's almost like they have to be like electric car therapists or something, calming everybody down. Okay, so new tech is changing how we learn to drive.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the instructors who can, like, get with the program and learn all this new stuff, especially about electric cars, they're going to have a serious advantage. But, we can't talk about all this without mentioning the other big thing, right? Self-driving cars.
Right. The elephant in the room.
Exactly. I mean, what happens to driving instructors when the cars don't need us anymore?
That's the question, isn't it? Some of the articles we read, they made it seem like driving instructors are going to be out of a job. But it's not really that simple.
Okay, tell me more. I'm all ears.
I mean, yeah, you can totally picture a future where driving instructors just aren't a thing anymore. Like, why would you need them if the car just drives itself, right? But honestly, that whole cars driving themselves thing, it's still a long way off.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things where it's always just around the corner.
Right. But we still got a long way to go, tech-wise. Think about it. For a car to be totally self-driving, it has to be able to handle, like, any road, any conditions, rain, snow, whatever, and do it all without a human having to jump in. That's asking a lot.
So all those self-driving taxis we keep hearing about, those aren't quite ready for prime time either then, huh?
Nope, not even close. And the thing is, while we wait for the tech to catch up, you know who could be super helpful? Driving instructors.
Oh, really? Interesting. What do you mean?
Well, first of all, people need to actually understand how this technology works, like really understand it, because there's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of people don't know the facts.
You're preaching to the choir. I mean, even I don't totally get how the cars make decisions and stuff. It's so complicated.
And that's where driving instructors come in. They could be the ones who educate everyone. Like, here's what these cars can actually do, and here's what they can't do, that kind of thing. And of course, how to stay safe.
Yeah, it's not about learning to drive anymore. Now it's like, how do you be a good passenger to a robot,
Exactly. And then there's this whole other level, too. What if these instructors started offering special training programs, get certified to work with autonomous vehicles? Because look, as these cars get fancier and fancier, there are going to be situations where a human might actually have to take over, right? So it would be really important to have somebody in the driver's seat who really, really knows what they're doing.
So it's like the job of a driving instructor isn't going away. It's morphing into something totally new and different.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Adapt or die, right? Just like any job where the technology is changing super fast.
Okay, so, listener, what does all this mean for you?
Well, if you're thinking about becoming a driving instructor, first of all, good for you. It's a wild ride right now. But if you're up for it, if you're ready to learn and adapt to all this crazy new stuff, there's a ton of opportunity out there for you.
You've got to be tech savvy, that's for sure. It's not an option anymore. For real. And like we were talking about, learning all about electric cars, autonomous vehicles, that's definitely the way to go.
Totally. You could be on the cutting edge of the whole driving thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But here's one last thing to think about. Let's say, just for fun, that one day Elles cars drive themselves. Nobody needs driving instructors anymore, at least not for teaching people how to drive. What LFD could those instructors do? I mean, they know how to keep people safe. They're great at teaching, right? What if they use those skills somewhere else?
Right. What could they do? It's something to think about, isn't it? That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope we've given you a lot to think about and maybe even inspired you a little. Until next time.